Hello, and welcome in my little corner of the internet. My name is Jess, and here we read all kinds of stories. Some are true stories, some fiction, and some true stories that we sometimes wish were fiction. We do them all. So if you're into intriguing, dark, and scary tales, it's time to kick back, chill, and relax. If you're new here, welcome. Stay a bit, see if you like it. We'd love to have you. Now tonight's chapter. The Silver Wolf Queen. Chapter 15. The Last Keeper. No one spoke. The old man stood quietly at the end of the corridor, his silver lantern casting a warm glow across the polished stone beneath his feet. His smile was kind, patient, as though he had been expecting this moment for a very long time. His final words still echoed through the hall. "Welcome home, Your Majesty." Rowan stared at him. "I think." He blinked several times. "You've mistaken me for someone else." The old man's smile widened ever so slightly. His voice was calm. "I most certainly have not." Silence returned. Darius glanced from Rowan to the old man and back again. "I don't know." He scratched the back of his neck. "I've known him for a while now and—" He looked thoughtfully at Rowan. "I've mistaken him for an idiot once or twice, but royalty? Not so sure about that one." Rowan sighed. "Really?" "I'm just trying to ease the tension. Sarcasm is my default when I'm a little tense, okay?" "Well, it's not working." "I know." Darius shrugged. "It usually doesn't." To everyone's surprise, the old man chuckled. A genuine, warm laugh echoed through the vast corridor. It has been many years since these halls have heard laughter. He smiled at Darius. The 7 guardians remained kneeling. Not one had moved since the old man's arrival. Corvin noticed. He had spent decades studying discipline. This was something else entirely. Respect. Not demanded. Earned. He stepped forward. "Who are you?" The old man turned toward him. His gentle expression never changed. "I have carried many names. Most have long been forgotten. Names can be dangerous." Corvin frowned. "They have power. Especially old ones." The lantern's silver flame flickered softly. Darius quietly leaned toward Rowan. I have a feeling every answer from him is going to create 3 new questions. Rowan couldn't disagree. The old man slowly walked toward them. His footsteps made almost no sound upon the polished floor. And as he passed the guardians, each bowed their heads lower. Not because he demanded it. Because they chose to. When he reached Rowan, he stopped. Only a single pace separated them. Up close, the old man's eyes were extraordinary. They weren't silver nor blue. They seemed to change with the light, carrying hints of both. Yet what struck Rowan most wasn't their color. It was the kindness within them. The old man studied his face quietly, then smiled. "You have your mother's eyes." Rowan's heart skipped. "My—" His voice faltered. "You knew my mother?" "I did." The answer came without hesitation. "I knew your father as well." A lump formed in Rowan's throat. "What were they like?" Sadness crossed the old man's face. "They laughed often." He looked toward the distant ceiling. "They believed people deserved second chances." A faint smile returned. "And your father had a terrible habit of bringing stray wolves into the palace." Darius smiled. "Sounds like Rowan." Rowan ignored him. My father never told me any of this. The old man's voice softened. He couldn't. To tell you the truth, would have signed your death warrant. Aldrin stepped forward carefully. His breathing had become uneven. There are stories. Very old stories. They speak of a man who refused to abandon the royal halls. The old man looked at him with obvious recognition. You've read the chronicles. Aldrin's eyes widened. You know them? I helped write them. The words struck everyone silent. Corvin stared. Impossible. The chronicles were written over 1,000 years ago. The old man nodded. They were. And yet, here we both stand. He smiled gently. No one knew what to say. Even Darius had finally run out of clever remarks. The old man looked around the corridor, his eyes lingering on each face in turn. Corvin, Aldrin, Darius, the Ravens. Finally, Rowan. I imagine you have more questions than answers, he said warmly. Darius let out a slow breath. That might be the understatement of the century. The old man laughed again. I hope so. He slowly lifted the silver lantern. Its light grew brighter, illuminating the corridor ahead. Ancient murals stretched into the distance, their silver inlays shimmering as though newly polished. What lies ahead cannot be explained standing in a doorway, he said softly. He turned gracefully. If you would be so kind, walk with me. He looked back over his shoulder, meeting Rowan's eyes. Without waiting for an answer, the old man began walking deeper into the forgotten halls. The 7 guardians rose as one. Then, in perfect silence, they followed. The old man walked slowly down the ancient corridor, the silver lantern swaying gently at his side. Its soft light seemed to awaken the walls themselves. One by one, the faded carvings began to shimmer. Not with magic, with memory. Figures that had appeared worn and lifeless moments before now revealed astonishing detail. Kings, queens, children, wolves running freely beside them. Darius stared in disbelief. I swear those weren't there a second ago. They were. The old man's voice echoed back without him turning around. You simply weren't ready to see them. Darius sighed. I was afraid you were going to say something like that. A quiet laugh escaped Rowan. So was I. The sound surprised everyone. It surprised Rowan most of all. When was the last time he'd laughed? Not out of relief. Not because something was funny. Just naturally. The old man smiled to himself but said nothing. Sometimes silence was the best answer. Corvin finally broke the stillness. You expect us to trust you? The old man stopped walking. He turned just enough to meet the Raven Master's gaze. No. The answer was immediate. I expect nothing. If you wish to leave, no one will stop you. He gestured toward the corridor behind them. Corvin frowned. You would let us walk away? You already know where this place is. What would I gain by imprisoning you? The Raven Master had no answer. The old man continued. Trust is never demanded. It is earned. One choice at a time. Corvin found himself lowering his eyes. Somehow, that simple statement carried more authority than every command Malachar had ever given. They continued walking. The corridor stretched on far longer than seemed possible. Every few yards, another mural covered the walls. One showed children racing through fields beneath enormous silver trees. Another depicted craftsmen forging swords beside wolves twice the size of horses. Further ahead, a queen knelt before a frightened little girl. Not to command her, to comfort her. Rowan slowed his pace. That's different. The old man glanced toward the carving. How so? He looked at the mural again. Every kingdom I've ever heard about carved victories. Battles. Kings. Power. But these. His fingers traced the air without touching the wall. They're carving kindness. The old man smiled warmly. Now you're beginning to understand. Aldrin stopped before another mural. His breath caught. The carving showed 7 rulers gathered around a circular stone table. Each wore a different crown. Each bore a different crest. The wolf, the stag, the raven, the bear, the serpent, the hawk, and the silver crown surrounded by 7 stars. The 7 houses. They really governed together. The old man nodded. There was never one ruler. Rowan looked confused. He hesitated. But you called me, Your Majesty. I did. Then why wasn't there one king? The old man stopped beside the mural. His fingers rested gently upon the image of the 7 thrones. You've been asking the wrong question. Everyone looked at him. He smiled. You assume a king rules. Our monarch served. The corridor fell silent. In the Silver Kingdom, the crown was never a reward. It was a burden, a promise. The last person to eat, the first person to bleed. Darius looked at Rowan. I suddenly don't want your promotion anymore. Rowan gave him a sideways glance. I don't remember applying. The old man chuckled. Very few worthy rulers ever do. As they rounded the next corner, the corridor opened into a vast gallery. Sunlight, real sunlight, poured through towering crystal windows. Darius stopped so abruptly that Corvin nearly walked into him. We're underground. He looked upward. That's right, we are. Then where's the sun? The old man looked toward the brilliant light filtering through the crystal ceiling. It isn't the sun. What is it? The old man was quiet for several seconds. When he finally answered, his voice held both pride and sorrow. It is the last light Queen Liriana ever touched. No one spoke. The words settled over the gallery like a prayer. Then Rowan noticed something. Beneath the crystal windows stood a long row of stone statues. Dozens of them. Every statue faced the entrance. Every face was different. Men, women, young, old. Each held one hand over their heart, as though welcoming someone home. Rowan slowly counted them. There were 23. The old man watched him carefully. You noticed. Who are they? The old man's smile faded completely. That's... He looked at the silent stone figures. They were the last people to see the Silver Kingdom alive. Rowan couldn't take his eyes off the statues. 23 men and women. No two alike. Some wore crowns. Others wore the plain clothing of merchants, healers, blacksmiths, or shepherds. One held a child in her arms. Another carried a shepherd's staff. An elderly man leaned on a walking stick, his face lined with age, but carved with quiet dignity. None of them looked like heroes. They looked ordinary. They weren't soldiers, Rowan said softly. The keeper stepped between the statues as though walking among old friends. They were something far rarer. He stopped beside the statue of a young woman with a basket of flowers resting against her hip. They chose compassion when fear would have been easier. His hand rested gently on the stone basket. She was the palace gardener, the finest in the kingdom. Darius frowned. The gardener. The keeper nodded. When the invasion began, she could have fled. Instead, he smiled sadly. She stayed behind to care for the wounded. His eyes lingered on the statue. She saved nearly 200 lives before the city finally fell. Silence settled over the gallery. Darius slowly looked around. So these aren't kings. They're heroes. The keeper smiled. They simply did what was right. He continued walking, stopping before each statue. A baker who fed soldiers and refugees until there was no flour left. A stable boy who led frightened children through hidden tunnels while the city burned above them. A young wolf handler who refused to abandon the injured wolves too weak to run. Each story lasted only a few moments, yet everyone carried the same lesson. Greatness had never belonged only to rulers. It belonged to ordinary people who chose extraordinary courage. Rowan found himself listening less to the stories and more to the man telling them. He spoke every name from memory, every face, every sacrifice, as though the 1,000 years between then and now had passed in the blink of an eye. You knew them all. The keeper stopped. I did. You remember every name. His voice was barely above a whisper. I promised I would. And promises matter. Corvin had remained unusually quiet. Finally, he spoke. Why only 23? The keeper looked toward the final statue. Because only 23 remained. The rest? They died buying time, so others could escape. Aldrin lowered his head. My teachers always believed thousands survived. The keeper gave a slow, sorrowful shake of his head. Thousands escaped the city, but very few survived the years that followed. For decades, Malachar hunted them. Patiently, relentlessly. The old man's eyes settled on Rowan. Your father was one of the last. A heaviness settled over Rowan's chest. He had spent years believing his father had abandoned something. Now he understood. His father had carried something. The burden of an entire bloodline. The keeper stopped before the final statue. Unlike the others, this one had no face. The features had never been carved. Only a smooth outline remained. Rowan frowned. It isn't finished. No, it never was. The keeper's fingers brushed lightly across the untouched stone. It was left unfinished on purpose. Why? The old man looked at Rowan. Because no one knew who the last guardian of the kingdom would be. Darius slowly folded his arms. So they left a place for someone who hadn't been born yet. The keeper nodded. Hope. He smiled gently. Sometimes hope needs a seat at the table. Without warning, one of the moon's sprites fluttered into the gallery. Then another. Within seconds, dozens danced around the unfinished statue. Their silver wings illuminated the smooth stone face. The tiny creatures chirped excitedly. The keeper watched them with quiet fascination. They've never done that before. Rowan stepped closer. As he reached the statue, the moon's sprites parted, making room for him. His hand rose almost instinctively. He gently touched the unfinished stone. The gallery trembled. Only slightly. A faint pulse spread through the statue. Not enough to frighten anyone. Just enough for every person in the room to feel it beneath their feet. The keeper closed his eyes. A smile slowly spread across his face. I wondered, he whispered, if it would recognize you. Rowan looked at him. What did I do? You didn't do anything. The keeper opened his eyes again. A soft grinding echoed somewhere deep within the mountain. Not violent. Not threatening. Ancient. Patient. As though another forgotten chamber had just awakened. The keeper's expression became thoughtful. He looked toward the darkness beyond the gallery. It seems the mountain wishes to show you something. The low rumble continued beneath their feet. Not loud, not violent. Just steady. like an old heart awakening after a very long sleep. Everyone stood perfectly still. Everyone except the keeper. He smiled. I wondered how long it would take. Rowan looked at him. You expected this? I hoped for it. The old man walked toward the unfinished statue, placing one weathered hand gently against its smooth stone shoulder. His voice carried a quiet sadness. For 1,000 years, this mountain has waited for someone it recognized. He looked back at Rowan. It has been lonely. Darius frowned. Look. He pointed at the floor. I know we're all pretending that sentence made perfect sense, but are we seriously saying the mountain is lonely? The keeper's eyes twinkled with amusement. You ask questions instead of just dismissing what you don't understand. Darius blinked. I suppose I do. Is that bad? A wise man once said that curiosity is the beginning of wisdom. Darius grinned. I like that man already. The keeper's eyes rested on him. You should. After all, I was quoting you. Silence. Darius frowned. But I don't remember saying that. You will. The gallery fell silent. Rowan slowly turned toward the keeper. But what did you mean? The old man simply smiled. Time isn't always as straight as we believe it to be. Darius rubbed his temples. I liked it better when I was confused by wolves. Somehow, I felt less dumb. The grinding sound stopped and a loud click echoed through the gallery. Every statue suddenly glowed with a faint silver outline, one after another. 23 statues. 23 gentle lights. Then, an unfinished statue. Unlike the others, its light was brighter, warmer. The stone beneath Rowan's hand became pleasantly warm. Ancient lines began appearing across its smooth face. Not cracks, carvings. Painstakingly, slowly. The mountain itself was finishing what the sculptor had left incomplete. Everyone watched in stunned silence. Eyes, a nose, a jawline, the outline of windswept hair. The features sharpened little by little, until Darius gasped. How the... Corvin's eyes widened. Aldrin simply stared. The face wasn't identical, but it was unmistakably familiar. It looked like Rowan. Not exactly as he was today. Older, wiser, more at peace. The statue wasn't copying his appearance. It was showing the man he had yet to become. Rowan slowly stepped backward. I don't understand. And nor should you. The keeper's voice was gentle. No one understands the path while they're walking it. He studied the completed statue. It only shows possibilities, not certainties. So it can change? Oh yes, it has before. Rowan looked at the stone face once more. Then why does it look like me? The keeper met his gaze. Because the mountain believes. A long silence followed. Whether Rowan himself believed was another matter entirely. Aldrin slowly approached the statue. His hands trembled. I've read every surviving chronicle, every fragment, every poem. He looked toward the keeper. Not one of them mentions this place. The old man nodded. That was intentional. You erased yourselves from history. We hid. The keeper corrected him gently. There is a huge difference. He looked around the gallery. If evil burns a library, the wise do not build the next one in the same place. Corvin absorbed those words quietly. Everything Malachar had taught him was built on conquest. These people thought only of preservation. Not dominance, but survival. The keeper suddenly became still. His expression changed. For the first time since they had met him, his smile disappeared and the warmth left his eyes. He slowly turned toward the corridor behind them. The 7 guardians reacted instantly, helmets turning toward the same dark passage. The moon's sprites vanished into the ceiling without a sound. Even the silver light filling the gallery seemed to dim. Rowan felt it too. A presence. Heavy. "They've crossed the outer wards," the keeper whispered. His voice was barely audible. A distant horn echoed somewhere deep within the mountain. Once, then again. The sound was unlike any horn Rowan had ever heard. It wasn't a warning. It was a summons. The High King's guardian lowered to one knee before Rowan, then spoke with a voice that echoed through the gallery. "The heir must be protected." Every other guardian knelt beside him. The keeper closed his eyes. The waiting is now over. The horn's haunting note slowly faded into silence. No one moved. Even the air inside the gallery felt heavier. Rowan looked from the kneeling guardians to the keeper. "You know who's coming, don't you?" It wasn't a question, more of a realization. The old man answered anyway. "I know who they serve, and that's worse." The words settled over the room like a storm cloud. The keeper walked to one of the crystal windows. Beyond it there was no view of mountains, no stone, no earth. Instead, the crystal showed a sea of silver mist drifting beneath a sky filled with stars. It was beautiful, peaceful. Darius stepped beside him. "I give up. I've stopped asking how any of this works. Every time I think I have a grip on things, something even more bizarre happens." A wise decision. The keeper smiled faintly. "Most of us spend our lives believing we understand the world." He rested one hand against the crystal. "But the truth is, the world is far older than our understanding of it." Corvin approached Rowan quietly. The Raven Master spoke so softly that only Rowan could hear. "If fighting starts, you stay behind the guardians." Rowan looked at him. "What the hell? But I can fight." "I know." Corvin nodded. "But today..." He glanced toward the ancient warriors. "Your life is worth more than mine." Rowan frowned. "I don't like hearing that." "Neither do I. But that's irrelevant." Corvin looked away. "I've spent too many years protecting the wrong man." His eyes hardened with quiet resolve. "I'm not making that mistake again." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Rowan did something that surprised them both. He held out his hand. Corvin looked at it, then clasped it firmly. No words were needed. One had offered trust. The other had accepted it. The keeper watched from across the gallery. A small smile touched his face. "The first bridge." Aldrin looked at him. "What bridge?" "The one between yesterday and tomorrow." A gentle breeze drifted through the gallery. The moon sprites slowly returned, though this time they stayed close to the ceiling. Their usual playful chirping had disappeared. They seemed nervous, almost watchful. The keeper noticed. "They can feel darkness before we can." Darius looked upward. "I don't suppose they also know how many enemies are coming?" "They do. And they've never learned to count." Darius sighed. "I walked right into that one." A faint chuckle spread through the room. Even Corvin allowed himself the smallest smile. The brief laughter eased the tension, if only for a heartbeat. The keeper stepped toward the unfinished, now finished, statue. He studied Rowan's stone likeness in silence. "I've waited many years to ask someone this." Rowan looked at him. "Ask what?" "If the crown demanded that you give your life, would you?" The keeper's voice remained gentle. The question struck the room like a blade. Darius immediately stepped forward. "That's not a fair question." "No, it isn't." The keeper agreed. but the crown has never been fair. Rowan didn't answer immediately. His thoughts drifted to his father, to everyone who had died protecting a future they would never see. Finally, he spoke. If giving my life would save the people I love. He swallowed. Then I'd already consider it spent. The gallery fell silent. The keeper's eyes glistened. He bowed his head. So much like your father. Before Rowan could respond, the silver lantern suddenly flared. Its calm glow became a brilliant white. The keeper's expression changed instantly. Everyone. His voice was calm. The 7 guardians surrounded Rowan without hesitation. What is it? Aldrin asked. The keeper didn't answer. Instead, he raised the lantern toward the entrance to the gallery. The silver flame stretched into a narrow beam, pointing down the corridor they had walked only minutes before. Footsteps. Not hurried. Not clumsy. Measured. Confident. Someone was approaching. One person. No armor clinked. No shouted orders echoed through the halls. Only footsteps. Slow. Patient. As though whoever was coming had absolutely no doubt they belonged there. Corvin lowered his spear into a fighting stance. I don't like this. The keeper's face became unreadable. The footsteps stopped just beyond the doorway. A shadow stretched across the polished floor. Then a calm voice echoed into the gallery. So, the stranger said, it seems I finally found you. And that's where we'll leave Chapter 15. What began as a journey into forgotten ruins has become something far greater. Rowan didn't find the remains of a dead kingdom. He found its heart, and it's still beating. Just as Rowan began to understand who he might become, an ancient horn echoed through the mountain, and a lone stranger crossed the forgotten wards. Whoever he is, even the keeper, a man who has remained calm for 1,000 years, recognized that his arrival changes everything. Friend or enemy, messenger or executioner. If you've been enjoying the Silver Wolf Queen, please do subscribe. Every subscriber brings us one step closer to our next community milestone. Thank you for spending part of your day with me. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. It's always amazing to see just how far these stories travel. Until next time, be blessed and stay safe out there.